Welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and today I have a special video for you. I have knit 3 relaxed tees by Aimee Sher of Aimee Sher Makes. And today I thought I would pull all 3 out and share with you a little bit of a project rundown and what I did differently with each of them and why I made the choices I made. All 3 are knit in different yarns and they have a slightly different fit. I chose the yarn and the fit for different purposes as far as wearing goes, and I'm really excited to share with you what they are. If you are new here, I include closed captioning on all of my videos. You can click on that CC button, and if I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube allows you to adjust the speed. I will include links to things that I talk about in the description box below this video. I do use Ravelry for my projects that are knit or crocheted, so the links to those projects will also be in the description box below this video. Oftentimes when I do the featured finished project videos, I break it down with the pattern specifications first, so all the information that you might gain prior to purchasing the pattern if it is a paid for pattern, and then I go into my process and any modifications that I made, and at the end I go into some styling options on how I plan on wearing it. Now because I am going over 3 of the same pattern but knit different ways, I'm not going to change into a bunch of outfits because that just does not sound very appealing to change that many times for 3 different things. So I'm not going to do that part, and I have actually talked about all 3 of these garments in separate videos already. This might be a good time to mention that in the Ravelry project pages, I do include a link to where I talked about the project as a work in progress and or as a finished project. So you can always look for more information there if that's something that is accessible to you. So instead of changing multiple times for all 3 different tops, I will include pictures on the screen that share how I may have worn it already in the past. Maybe I used it for pictures in my finished project photos or just other times that I have worn the garment already. That's a good time to note that I do put things on the screen sometimes either as a visual aid or to correct myself if I say something wrong. Sometimes I don't find it in the editing process and I realize it later, so sometimes corrections will be in the description box below this video. But in any case, if you are doing something else, I just wanted to make sure you knew that sometimes there will be things on the screen and I just don't want you to miss it. All right, let's jump into some pattern specifications. The Relax Tee by Aimee Sher is a paid for pattern. It is $10.50 USD. It was published in March 2025. It can be purchased on Ravelry or on their website. This is a fingering weight garment knit top down. The gauge for the garment is 24 stitches by 32 rows, and there is a knit to purl to ribbing on the neckline, the cuffs, and the body hem. Knit top down, it has a compound raglan shaping for the yoke, and what a compound raglan does is it creates more of an S shape to fit the body so that you don't end up with a lot of excess fabric in the underarm area. The compound raglan increases are given in this written instruction raglan tracker row by row table format, which I really enjoy. Usually I'm writing out those by myself because I want to make sure I don't miss an increase or that I increase in the right spot and I end up with the same stitch count. I really don't like it if I finish the whole thing and then realize that one part has like 5 more stitches than the other because I didn't keep track of it along the way. And so that is provided and I really just have to cross it off as I go. So you cast on the back of the neck first and you're going to work flat to create this neck shaping before you join the work in the round to continue. I find that creates a really nice sitting crew neck that doesn't ride up in the front, and then also there aren't any gaping holes from short rows. I feel like sometimes knitting short rows, especially if it's a plant-based fiber, you don't get the extra fuzziness of the fabric to fill in the gaps, and then sometimes the tension of the stitches just aren't as even. So when there aren't short rows to work for shaping this area and instead you are using thoughtfully inserted increases, then you don't have the gapy stitches in this area. Needle sizes recommended are a US 2, US 3, and US 4, and I'll have the corresponding millimeter numbers here on the screen as well. Yardages are given for all of these sizes, and the recommended way to pick a size is based on your upper bust measurement. If you are unsure how to do that or what that means, Aimee also has a video that talks all about that I will link below. The sizes range from A to J to fit upper bust measurements of 31 inches to 60.25 inches. The measurements for the actual full bust measurement as well as the finished chest circumference measurement of the garment is also given prior to purchasing the pattern. There's also a schematic. I will show that here on the screen. I find schematics so helpful because I know ahead of time if I'm going to make any adjustments along the way. And this way it also gives me an idea of whether or not the garment is going to fit my purposes and fit my body. If you prefer to knit your garment slightly longer, there is A-line shaping instructions included, but if you don't want to do that and you prefer a boxier fit or maybe cropped and you just don't want it to flare out as much, you can just omit that A-line shaping. Bust dart instructions are available in the pattern should you need additional fabric in the front to keep the garment from riding up. The recommended yarn is a fingering weight yarn to achieve gauge, and the pattern does come in a long sleeve or a short sleeve option. As far as formatting and accessibility goes, a large format pattern file is included. So I mentioned I made 3 different ones. We are going to start with the first one. I started this one at the beginning of April year 2025 and I finished it at the very end of May year 2025. For this one, I cast on size A, but finished between kind of an A and a B because I was between sizes. The yarn I used is Pearl Soho Santalina in the colorway Teal Tide. This yarn I purchased during a sample sale or a spring cleaning sale. I purchased 300 grams at 40% off for a total of $34.20 USD. And the total amount of yarn that I used was 220 grams. The way I knit this one was slightly different from the pattern in that I did go up a needle size to a US 5 for the main fabric. That is a 3.75 millimeter needle. And then for all of the ribbing, I did a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needle. I went up a needle size because I find this yarn to be a heavier fingering weight or a light sport weight yarn. It is 328 yards for 100 grams, and the composition of it is 70% organically grown cotton, 20% rayon from bamboo, and 10% hemp. I have used this yarn in multiple other garments and accessories, and I really like how it wears and washes. It is machine washable and allowed to go in the dryer at tumble dry low. I really appreciate that kind of fabric for hot weather garments because with sweat and potential like beach sand and sunscreen and all the things, I want to be able to throw it into the washing machine and not worry about it. I have put it in the dryer on tumble dry low, but I've also just laid it flat to dry as well. And I feel like either way it comes out just fine. The stitches do end up tightening up a little bit, but when I knit this on a US 5, I kind of accounted for that, I guess. I knew my gauge is going to be slightly bigger, so instead of 24 stitches for 4 inches, it was probably going to be closer to 23 or 22, and I was totally okay with that, knowing that it was going to potentially stretch out a little, but also shrink a little just between wearing and washing. All of my bind-offs I bound off with a US 6 needle only because I want to make sure my bind-offs aren't too tight. And I just do that by going up a couple of needle sizes in a double pointed needle and just binding off that way. And that prevents me having to make sure my tension is even by binding off loosely, because I feel like I can't keep it exactly the same from stitch to stitch. So if I just up my needle size, then I don't have to be so cognizant of trying to make sure I bind off loosely. I can just bind off normally, but bind off with a bigger needle. I'm going to get a little bit closer here, so hopefully you can see the texture. This version, I knit the most to pattern. I think aside from needle sizes, everything is knit to pattern. I omitted the A-line shaping here, so it is a boxier cropped fit. It hits me at high hip. I have it worn with a tiered gathered skirt here that is self-drafted. This is a linen skirt that is this bright neon lemon limey color, and I really like it with this top. I feel like it hits right past the waistband, and if I wanted to, I could put the waistband a little higher and tuck just the front in if I want. And I feel like this is just a really easy outfit that can be worn when traveling or just any day in the spring, summer, or fall. I suppose lemon lime isn't really a fall color. But currently our weather is not very seasonally appropriate, so I feel like my summer items are still in frequent rotation right now. So I think that's all I have to say about this version. This is the first one that I made. It is completely machine washable, very warm weather friendly, super easy to throw on over anything. And now I'm going to put on my second one. All right, so I've changed into my second one. It's kind of my third one. It's the third one that I cast on, but the second one that I finished. So this one I started middle of June, year 2025. I finished it middle of July, year 2025. And this one I knit in the Wandering Flock Cotton Lino base. And this one I did receive yarn support from Aimee for knitting this pattern. I cast on the second size for this one. I just wanted it to have a loosier, airy fit. And again, like I mentioned, I'm kind of between the A and B size. And so I figured for a warm weather garment, I just wanted a little more ease. So that is what I did. I achieved gauge with the US 4 3.5 millimeter needle for the main. I did use the US 3 3.75 millimeter for the body hem. And then I used a US 2 or 2.75 millimeter for the neckband. And I actually went back and revised the sleeves a little bit after I talked about it here on the channel in a previous episode. Let me see if I wrote down what I did. Okay, I remember what happened now. So the fiber content of this yarn is 35% organic cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, and 15% baby alpaca. It is considered a sport weight yarn. It comes in 328 yards for 100 grams. And just before I forget to say, the colorways are lilac and poppy. And I did modify this one. I took out the textured stripes and just did these 2 row or 2 round contrasting stripes. I just thought it would be fun to play around with that, and I didn't want the texture to compete with the visual interest of the stripes, and so that's why I changed that part up. Okay, back to what we were talking about, sleeve modification. So I think I initially knit it to pattern, or maybe my sleeve cuffs were a little too long. Something happened where this fabric just stretched out a little. It is super drapey, and so what happened was just with the weight of wearing it, now this is not a heavy garment, but just the weight of wearing it meant that my sleeves went a little longer, and then they went into my elbow crease to the point where if I bend my arm, that cuff would also bend, and then the fabric just looked funny there, and I didn't like how that looked. So I know I definitely shortened the sleeve length, and I might have even used a smaller needle size on the ribbing part to keep it from flaring. So I think I shortened the sleeve length by shortening the cuffs, and then I used a US 2 for the ribbing, which is what I did for the neckband, which is different from the body hem. The body hem is a US 3, the neckband and the cuffs I used a US 2. So that's a little bit different from the pattern. So I basically listened to the yarn, listened to my body, listened to the garment, and figured out how to make it work in the best way that I wanted it to fit. And so I'm very happy with how it fits now. The sleeves are still elbow length, but they don't hit in my elbow crease when I bend my arm, so I don't end up with a fold there. And then the rest of the body drapes beautifully. I don't believe I did any increases in the body on this one either. Because I went up a size, I didn't feel like it needed any more fabric or any more positive ease. I don't have it tight on my hips at all. And so this one finishes at 37, about 37 inches, I believe. And then no A-line shaping. So that gives me about 5 inches of positive ease at full bust circumference and about 2 inches of ease at the hips. And I'm very pleased with how this turned out. I really like this color combination. I feel like it also goes with my lemon lime skirt. I think it's super fun, and I can still tuck it in the front if I want, or leave it out, or tuck the whole thing in. I feel like this is really comfortable to wear. I like the neckline. It is not too close to my neck, but it's not falling off my shoulders. This one is a very versatile piece as well. Because of the alpaca content, I feel like it isn't completely warm weather wear for me, but spring and fall, and definitely layered under cardigans. This can be worn 3 seasons out of the year. The total amount of yarn I used was about 203 grams of the lilac, which is a complete full 2 hanks of yarn. And then the poppy color, I used about 24 grams of that. Another thing to note is that when I was wet blocking this, I didn't have any color bleed into the water. At first I was a little nervous about the poppy color because it tends to be that a lot of more vibrant reds or deep purples and teals, those kinds of very saturated colors, tend to have some dye bleed out into the water. But washing this in a bucket with cold water and Eucalan wool wash, I didn't notice any color dye into the water. So just wanted to point that out. I feel like that's always very helpful. If I'm picking out yarns for a project, if someone tells me that I need to be careful because the dye rubbed off on their fingers while they were knitting with it, or it bled into everything when they washed it, I want to know that ahead of time so that I can prepare myself for it. Okay, we are going to go on to my third one now. Okay, so this is actually the second one that I cast on, and I actually cast it on before my first one was finished, but then I didn't finish this one until the middle of September. And so it's not that it took me 6 months, well no, that's not 6 months, 5 months of knitting on it all the time, but the fiber content that I chose for this one is definitely not something that I gravitate towards knitting on in the summer when it's like humid and hot and sticky. So this one I knit in Pearl Soho's Quartz Base, and that is a 65% non-superwash merino, 35% Surrey alpaca. It's a fingering weight yarn. It is so nice and warm and drapey and fuzzy, and I love wearing this. I have made so many accessories and garments in this yarn, and so I really wanted a long sleeve sweater tee in this yarn, but I just wasn't gravitating towards working on it in the summer. So I finished it early fall and I love it. For this one, I also cast on the size B, finishing at 37.25 inches, and I did do some of the A-line shaping in the body. I used all of the needle sizes recommended in the pattern for where they were recommended to be, and I did get gauge except for the sleeves. I think for the sleeves I should have gone up to a US 5, but it turned out fine. What happened is that my gauge probably tightened knitting on a small circumference needle, and then I ended up with like no ease in my sleeves. So they still fit just fine. Maybe there's like 1 inch of positive ease, but I think if I wanted a little more ease in the sleeves, I probably could have done the decreases less frequently or done no decreases or just went up a needle size. But either way, it's just fine, it fits fine, and I think over time the fabric will probably relax a little bit too, and so there'll just be a little more ease. So I wouldn't say there's negative ease, but there's just not as much positive ease in my sleeves for this. This version is color blocked. I have used so many different colors of the quartz base in this tee. I guess it's not really a tee because it's long sleeves. Well, there can be long sleeve tees. So anyway, in this sweater, and these are all yarns that I purchased and I just accumulated them over the years. I grab a few different colors at different 25% off sales, and I end up with this beautiful color story. I feel like a fresh box of crayons in this one. I think that's part of the drive for me to have it finished in September when school was starting and we were getting together like all the backpacks and the kids' school supplies, and it just reminds me of like a fresh box of crayons, and I love it. So let's see if I can remember all the colors here for you. I did talk about this in a previous episode, so hopefully some of that has stuck in my brain and I remember it, but we'll see. All of the finishings like the neckband, the cuffs, and the body hem are done in this light gray called Ash Gray. And then the first color that's up by my neckband is Hydrangea Blossom. It's a beautiful lavendery periwinkle purpley blue color. And then we have, after that, Aquamarine Blue, which is a beautiful heathered tealy blue with some purple in it. And then Wild Orchid, it's this pinky purple. Pink Guava is this bright corally color. Green Veil is this very saturated, I would call it like a green. Maybe that makes sense to you when something's like red or like green. It just means it's like a standard green or like a crayon box green. I don't know. So this is a very green. And then next to it, we have golden green, which is more chartreuse yellow-green color. And then there is blue jeans, which is a deeper blue with some purple. And then wild lupine is this darker lavender. Rose hip is a pinkish red. Autumn oak is an orange with some like gold heathering in it. And then there is gray denim, which is a bluey gray color. And then in the sleeves, it goes back to hydrangea blossom before finishing off in ash gray. So there are more colors in the sleeves than there are in the body, because for me to have full length sleeves, I needed to add more colors. And the body is at a full length on me. It goes several inches past the top of my hips, I would say. And so this can be worn comfortably with, I feel like, any height of jeans and not feel like I'm going to show anything if I lift my arms. In total, I used about 241 grams of this fingering weight yarn. And again, I knit the second size, and that gives me about 5 inches of positive ease. So this one, I did do the A-line shaping because I knit it longer than my other ones. And so then the finished circumference, I believe, is 2 inches more in the hips than it is at the full bust, which means I have about 5 inches of positive ease at the full bust, and I have about 4 inches of positive ease in the hips. I did do my neckband a little bit different on this version. I had just done the regular pickup before, but I felt like my tension was kind of wobbly and it just didn't look very tidy. And so I tried a new to me technique that is not in the pattern, where you crochet all the way around and it creates a more stable edging. And then I pick up from the inner leg of that crochet stitch, which then creates this line of just one stitch between the main fabric and the ribbing. And then I can start my ribbing. So then I end up with this very tidy edge all the way around, and it's still very stable but not too tight. I made sure to use a crochet hook that wasn't too small because I wanted to make sure those stitches weren't going to be so tight where I couldn't put the thing over my head, or that my neckband would end up puckering in a weird spot or bulging out funny. And so I feel like it ended up working out really well. The crochet hook I used was a 3.75 millimeter hook, and I believe I picked up more stitches than called for in the pattern because I felt like my first one was too tight, but I feel like that could have also been my bind off was too tight, and so the whole thing was just a little difficult to put over my head, so I had to take off my glasses. And for anybody who wears glasses, you might know that it's just really annoying when you have to like take your glasses off, put them on, take them off. Anyway. So then when I was doing my neckband for the second time, I was aware of that and I picked up more stitches, and it ends up being just fine. It is not overly stretched out and it can fit over my head. And I think I can put it on while still wearing my glasses. So I can also take it off while my glasses are still on. I forgot to say something. I did change the texture a little bit on this one. I only did 1 purl ridge instead of 2. And so I felt like with the color change, that in itself was like a visual interest thing in that spot. And so I initially tried it the way it was written, and then it just didn't look right to me. So then I ripped that part out and then redid it with only 1 of the textures. And I really like that. I think that is everything I have to share about these 3 relax tees. So that's 1 pattern, 3 variations, 3 types of fiber content for each garment, and they look so different. They all have different purposes in my outfit rotations, and I just find them so delightful and such a good fit. And maybe it'll inspire you to think about patterns in a different way, in the sense that you can have 1 base pattern but create so many different things from it. So if you find something that has a really good fit and that you enjoy knitting it, then you can really run with it and do lots of different things. If something is textured, you can keep the texture or not. So I hope this video has inspired you to think about maybe your pattern library in a fresh way, or maybe look at what you've already made and see what you would like to make different for another version, or just thinking about how yarn choice and pattern matching can make a huge difference in the final result. I hope this just inspires you to play a little, explore a little, and see what you can come up with. I would love to hear from you in the comments below if you have a certain pattern that you have made more than once, and I would love to hear what draws you to that pattern and why you have made it more than once. If you have not done that and there is a pattern you would like to make more than once, I'd love to hear about that too. And maybe if you want to share what yarns you used, what colors, or maybe what drew you to making it more than once, I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure other people will be inspired from you as well. With that, cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!